I walk the abandoned railway at dusk. The tracks curve into blackness beneath the overpass, and something in that gradient pulls me forward. I've been here before, not in body but in archetype. The threshold, the descent, the question I cannot name aloud. My name is Elena, and I am 29 years old. I work in a library where silence is currency and patrons mistake my stillness for contentment. They do not see what I see when I look at them, the weight they carry. The stories they cannot tell, the fractures beneath the careful masks. I see too much, and it exhausts me. So, I come here, where the city empties into ruin, where no one asks me to translate myself. Tonight, something is different. Tucked against the base of the concrete pillar, half buried in gravel and rust, I find a lantern. Old brass, tarnished green, with a cracked glass panel that catches the last violet light. I lift it, heavy, real, the kind of object that carries history in its weight. You shouldn't be here. I turn. A man stands at the edge of the embankment, maybe 50, with a watchman's coat and eyes that have seen too many transgressions. He does not move closer. Neither should you, I say. He almost smiles. Fair enough. But that lantern, you found it? I nod. Then it's yours now. Don't say I didn't warn you. He turns and walks back towards the road, footsteps crunching on gravel, and then he is gone. I look down at the lantern. Inside the glass, something flickers. Not flame. Memory, perhaps. Or prophecy. I tuck it under my arm and walk home through streets that no longer feel entirely mine. That night, I dream of a cave. Not metaphor. An actual cave, limestone walls slick with moisture, a passage that narrows into darkness. I am alone, but I can hear breathing that is not my own. When I wake, the lantern sits on my bedside table, though I do not remember placing it there. The wick inside is cold, unlit, waiting. At the library the next morning, I meet Thomas. He is new, a volunteer cataloging the rare books collection, and he moves through the stacks with the careful reverence of someone who understands what it means to hold fragile things. Dark hair, wire-rimmed glasses, a scar along his jawline that suggests a story he will never tell unprompted. You're Elena, he says, not as a question. I am. They said you know this place better than anyone. That you can find books even the system has forgotten. I can. He hands me a slip of paper. A call number that does not exist in our catalog. Can you find this? I look at the number. Then at him. Why do you want it? Because it's been erased, he says. And things that are erased are usually worth remembering. I take the slip. Our fingers do not touch, but I still feel the exchange, a pact made in silence. I tell him I will look, and he nods, and when he leaves the room, the air feels thinner, as though something essential has been taken with him. I spend my lunch hour in the basement archives, where the oldest records are kept in boxes that smell of mildew and time. The call number leads me to a section that should not exist. A gap in the shelving. A space where something has been removed. On the shelf below, I find a second object, a key. Iron. Simple, with a worn grip that fits my palm as though it has been waiting for my hand. I pocket the key. That night, I bring both objects home. The lantern and the key. I set them side by side on my kitchen table and stare at them until the room grows dark. Then I light the lantern. The flame catches immediately, burns bright and clean, and in its glow, I see writing on the inner glass. Etched, small, difficult to read. What you hide, you become. I close my eyes. I know this truth already. I have spent years hiding my perceptions, my knowing, my refusal to perform the version of femininity the world expects. I have made myself small, quiet, safe. And in doing so, I have become the shadow I feared. The next day, Thomas is waiting for me outside the library. He looks agitated, urgent in a way that contradicts his careful composure. Did you find it? No book, I say. But I found this. I show him the key. He inhales sharply. Where you said it would be. More or less. He takes my wrist, gently, and his touch is ice. Elena, there are people looking for that key. People who do not want it found. Who are you? I ask. Someone who made a mistake, he says. Someone who thought he could outrun his own choices. He releases me. There's a place, an old theater on the east side. Condemned. But the door to the basement still opens, if you have the right key. Why would I go there? Because you're already halfway in, he says. And because you've been looking for a way out of the cage you built for yourself, this is it. But it's dangerous. I think of the lantern. The cave in my dream. The space where the book should have been. I think of the years I have spent translating myself into something palatable, something that will not disturb the order of things. I am tired of translation. Show me, I say. We go together at midnight. The theater is a ruin, ornate plasterwork crumbling, the marquee dark and broken. Thomas leads me to a side entrance, and I fit the key into the lock. It turns. The door opens onto a staircase that descends into cold, stale air. I light the lantern. Thomas follows. At the bottom, we find a room. Not a basement. A sanctuary. The walls are lined with books, real books, their spines unmarked but intact. In the center, a table. On the table, a ledger. And beside the ledger, a woman. She is older than me, perhaps 40, with silver threaded through her dark hair and eyes that recognize me before I recognize myself. Elena, she says. You know me, I know what you are. A keeper. Someone who sees the patterns others miss. Someone who refuses to lie, even when the truth is unbearable. Thomas steps forward. Miriam. I brought her. Miriam looks at him with something between pity and contempt. You brought her to save yourself, not to save her. The air shifts. I understand now. Thomas is not my ally. He is a pawn, or worse, a predator who mistook me for prey. He wanted the key, and he thought I would be too naive and too trusting to see the trap. Is that true? I ask him. He does not answer. That is answer enough. Miriam stands. The ledger records what was erased. Names. Histories. The people this city chose to forget because their truths were inconvenient. Your library was part of that erasure, Elena. Not by accident. By design. She opens the ledger. Page after page of names, dates, testimonies. Suicides that were not suicides. Disappearances that were not mysteries. The architecture of a city built on silenced voices. Why show me this? I ask. Because you already knew, Miriam says. You felt it every time you walked through those stacks. The absences. The gaps. You just didn't have language for it yet. I look at Thomas. What did you want? To destroy it, he says quietly. The ledger. To finish what they started. Why? Because my family is in there. And I'd rather forget than remember. I understand him then. The impulse to burn the evidence. To choose amnesia over anguish. But I also know what that choice costs. I have lived it. No. I say. Thomas moves fast. He lunges for the ledger, but Miriam is faster. She pulls it away, holds it against her chest like a shield. He reaches for a metal rod leaning against the wall, something left behind by construction or demolition, and I see the transformation in his face. Desperation, rage, the collapse of his carefully constructed persona. I step between them. You don't have to do this, I say. You don't understand, he says. I do, I say. But destroying the record won't change what happened. It will only make sure it happens again. He raises the rod, not to strike, I think, but to threaten. And in that moment, I make my choice. I raise the lantern. The flame flares bright, impossibly bright, and the room floods with light. Not physical light, something else. Revelation. In its glow, I see Thomas as he is. a man drowning in inherited shame, trying to silence the witness so he does not have to face his own complicity. And I see myself, the lone wolf, the one who walks between worlds, the keeper of uncomfortable truths. Put it down, I say. He looks at me, really looks, and something in him breaks. He lowers the rod. It clatters on the stone floor. He covers his face with his hands. I'm sorry, he whispers. Miriam watches us both. Then she hands me the ledger. This is yours now. Do what you will with it. I take the book. It is heavy, like the lantern, like the key, like every truth I have ever carried alone. What happens now? I ask. You decide, Miriam says. You can return it to the archives, where it will be buried again. Or you can bring it into the light. I look at Thomas, still trembling. And him, he leaves. And he lives with what he tried to do. That's punishment enough. Thomas stands. He does not look at me. He walks to the stairs and climbs them, one slow step at a time, and then he is gone. I hear the door close above us. Miriam smiles. You passed. Passed what? The test. The one you've been preparing for all your life. To choose integrity over comfort. To hold the lantern even when it burns. I look down at the ledger in my hands. How did you know I would? Because you're still here, she says. And because you recognized the cave. The weeks that follow are quiet and loud at once. I return to the library with the ledger hidden in my bag. I do not show it to my supervisor. I do not file it in the catalogue. Instead, I begin the work of transcription. Every name, every testimony, copied by hand into a new document. A record that cannot be erased because it exists in multiple forms, multiple places, multiple minds. I contact a journalist, a historian, an activist. I send them pieces carefully and strategically. I do not claim credit. I do not need to. The truth does not belong to me. It belongs to the silenced, and I am only its messenger. Thomas does not return to the library. I hear later that he has left the city. I do not know if he found peace or only distance. I hope, for his sake, that he found something. Miriam visits me once more, in the spring, when the library garden blooms with violets and wild iris. She brings me tea in a thermos, and we sit on the stone bench near the roses. You did well, she says. It doesn't feel like victory, I say. It isn't, she says. Victory is loud and clean. This is something else. Integrity. Witness. The quiet work of keeping the flame. She stands to leave, and I ask her the question I have been holding since that night in the basement. Are you real? Or are you the archetype? She smiles. Does it matter? No. I say. I suppose it doesn't. She touches my shoulder, once, and then she walks away through the garden gate. I do not see her again, but I feel her presence sometimes, in the space between knowing and doing, in the choice to speak when silence is easier. I keep the lantern on my desk at home. I don't light it often, but I don't hide it either. It sits beside my notebooks, my tea, my collection of small, essential things. A reminder that I am the keeper, the witness, the one who holds the flame in the dark. The railway at dusk still calls to me, but now I walk it with purpose rather than escape. I have learned to carry my solitude like a lantern rather than a burden. I have learned that the shadows are not my enemy. They are where I found my strength. And when the world asks me to explain myself, I no longer translate. I simply light the lantern and let them see what I have always seen, that some truths can only be held by those willing to walk alone. If Elena's journey spoke to you, explore the deeper patterns behind it, how INFJs transform solitude, empathy and shadow work into unshakable strength.